Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Roundtable, where we're looking at everything marketing, strategy, and how it relates to your business. And today, it may feel like it's a wee while away. Yep, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. It is coming, and it is coming quickly. So we thought we'd do a quick roundtable. Let's look at the main channels that you could be promoting your products on. What's the difference between 24 and 25? So what are the changes since last year? We're going to look at a few of the main platforms, Klaviyo, Shopify, Meta, Google, and TikTok. See what's changed, what you need to be thinking about, and some of those absolute core principles that are going to help you be successful in your Black Friday, Cyber Monday promotions for 2025. And with me, I've got Nick Thorpe and Marty Jenkins-Lyttle. And Nick, let's just kick into it, and we'll kick off with Klaviyo. It is a massively important channel when we're thinking about owned media or that database that we've already got. When we're spending so much money on advertising, when advertising over that Black Friday, Cyber Monday period is incredibly expensive with the increased competition, that owned media space and that leveraging platforms like Klaviyo or email platforms so critical. What is happening around Klaviyo, and what's the advice coming from the experts, and what are the things that have changed from 24 to 25? Because it's always changing.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, that's right. It does change, and Black Friday, some Cyber Monday themes, and everything else does seem to change each year. But I think the fundamentals don't really change. They stay the same. You've got to have your auditing of your website, making sure that's up and running, and all the connectors in as well. So whether that's the advertising platforms or, as you mentioned, email systems like Klaviyo. So I think the first and most important things is just to go through, audit your systems, make sure that everything's working. Are those connectors working? Is it sending if you're using Klaviyo, is it sending the emails that you expect to use? The dynamic pieces recommending in the correct way? Or if you're still maybe a wee bit using some of the old-fashioned static pieces as well, and there that maybe need an upgrade. So if we look at 2024, there were some basic things with your regular emails going out, looking at list growth, and SMS starting to creep as well. For 2025, I think there are some big changes coming in, which is really around personalisation at scale. So AI, and it was 2022. It seems like a lifetime ago now when ChatGPT all started coming in, and we started using it for some basic text and headlines and things like that. And all of that stuff is still available and working better than ever. But I think the personalization at scale that some of the platforms are now offering, like Klaviyo, just make things a lot easier and more effective for your market. So that can be in all sorts of ways. Just to give 3 examples, the lists and segment building capabilities of Klaviyo. You can use the natural language to identify your audiences now. You don't even have to connect up some of the SQL or queries to identify audiences. You can type in something as simple as give me everyone who's ordered product X in the last 6 months, and it'll generate that for you. The second one is just in the content creation as well. So it will give you, the ability to message some of your text, create A/B headlines, all things like that. And then the sending piece will allow you to look at things like dynamic timing, serving dynamic product recommendations, and that piece as well. And we'll even send those segments to the platforms such as you can integrate those segments directly into Google, Meta, and then other platforms as well. So that AI for personalization at scale is better than ever, and it's something that people should be looking at more closely.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some changes in regards to the number of flows and types of flows between 2024 and 2025 coming out from Klaviyo Direct and things like that. Have you sort of across that and what those changes are and the impact that it has?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's gone from personalization was maybe 2024. It's now hyper-personalization. And to give that extra personalization, what is more important than ever before is that first-party data. So you need to know about your customers. You need to know about your clients. You need to know what sort of products are they interested in. You need to know what sort of content are they interested in. Now, that sounds hard, But the good thing about it is Klaviyo and some of the other platforms have got systems that will do that for you. So if your audience is somebody maybe that's looked at a certain product X number of times, has ordered it, or it's according to the machine learning and algorithms will tell you if they are due to maybe churn or they should have bought by now but haven't. All of that stuff is available as profiles and audiences that you can send content to. So there are a whole raft of things that you can do on there. And I think last year the Klaviyo documentation had about 8 flows that were key in there. So things like your welcome flow, your cart abandonment, and some of the post-purchase thing. Now they're well over 13 with segmentation by behavior, spending, looking at things like for prospective customers, breaking it out, between prospective, new, and post-purchase or existing customers, and all sorts of variants on that as well. Because one of the big things that Klaviyo is getting more and more powerful at doing is that testing. So whether, again, it's send time, whether it's audience type, whether it's the sort of products that they're interested in, whether it's moving into some more lifetime value calculation. So how valuable is that customer? Should we send them an extra incentive when they reach a certain level? All of that stuff is available to be sent. And the great thing about a lot of these flows and automations is that they are a one-time setup. So yes, it's quite a bit of work to get them involved, to get them set up potentially. But once they're there, they just keep coming. And you get it done for this Black Friday. They send out, say, 3,000 emails for it. By next Black Friday, you've sent maybe another 33,000, and there's no extra involved. So it's kind of the gift that keeps giving, if you like, with this automation.
Yeah, for sure. Now that seems to be, some really great, I suppose, foundational work that needs to be implemented, and some changes from 24 to 25. Marty, from I don't know how many Black Friday, Cyber Mondays you've been involved in now, but when it comes to the lead-in to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and some of the things that those clients of ours and businesses should be starting to think about and planning when it comes to Klaviyo. I know SMS is a much more prevalent piece now, but what are some of the core fundamentals specifically relating to Black Friday, Cyber Monday that people should be thinking about today?
Yeah, cool. So first one, just to touch back on what Nick was saying there, is the integration to your core e-com, or usually Shopify, possibly WordPress, but back to your e-com site to make sure your data sending across in terms of your browse, your add to cart, your started checkout through to purchase and fulfilled order, so that you can build your segments or trigger your flows off the back of the correct actions. Most of that should be done automatically, but it's certainly worth checking. More importantly, though, the ones that may drop out is your connection out to something like Meta, TikTok, Pinterest, or Google Ads. Those ones are essential for having up to date. If you're running, has purchased in the last 180 days or has a lifetime value that's syncing dynamically to base your targeting or your lookalike on, you want to start advertising for customers to acquire them using that data probably year round anyway, but you'll very likely run into a lead-in phase where you're starting to advertise for that particular activation. That data is what you want to make sure, first of all, you're not advertising to your existing customers, but the people you are targeting are the people that are most likely to be valuable either long-term, not just a one-time buyer, so hopefully have purchased more than once or have spent over a certain amount, and that you can start advertising to those people. You may start brand first, you may start lead gen or drive to site or collect in platform closer to the time. So that phase of getting your connections and your integration sorted, starting to target and get in front of customers, looking to acquire their data. So if, again, first party for email, so that you've got something to contact them by, or phone number. Ideally, they should be in your database ahead of that time. And then you can start the warming side for your own database and your own advertising well in advance as well. The first part of that is your deliverability. That's one I would check now. So have a look at the deliverability metrics of something like a Klaviyo and see where you're sitting in terms of your score out of 100. Quite often there's some easy things that you can do to improve that, reducing your unsubscribes, reducing spam complaints, reducing bounce rates, looking at what's causing those and which flows and what you can do about it now to improve ahead of time. If you can get from, I see businesses that are down below 30 as an example, if you can get above that 50, 60, 70, and the highest one I've seen that we work with is up at 96. If you're sitting in that higher range, you're more likely to be in the inbox and being seen by people, which matters all year round, but even even more so during Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So check deliverability now and look at, no matter how good your score is, what can I do to improve it? Because it will help you. Then in terms of your warming and your preparation for getting ready to launch through that busy period, you can't go from 0 to 4 emails a week, as an example. You should be talking to your database either weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, very likely depending on what you sell. But also differently, looking at things like, currently am I marketing to an engaged 120-day, 100-day audience, or 180-day audience, or am I talking to everybody every week? The closer you get to that period, you typically talk to more people, and especially going into that sale, but it's certainly not the first time that they should be hearing from you for the year. So talk to them early, let them know. Very likely you'll be going early. Most people do. So when are you going early? What should they look out for? What date or time is that? Do they need to save something in their calendar? Is there any limit to what you're offering, like the first 100, the first 1,000, for a certain period of time for the first 24 hours? Will I do a VIP access piece at the start versus everybody else coming in later? All of those things matter depending on what the hook is there. You get people to look forward to that thing before it happens. And my main thing around prep and readiness would be make sure that you're planning what you're going to do now so that you can start talking about those things and start collecting. If you're collecting emails for a Black Friday sale with no context to it, why would someone sign up? It's got to be more like, why should they look forward to this thing? Why would it cut through with a certain customer? Do you have different offers for different people? Is there a way to frame that? Is there a category level piece that matters there? So that's probably my keys. And then the other one that's really important then, just looking at it in terms of phasing, is as that sale goes live, so much of what you planned should be ready to go beforehand. So your flow change outs, whether there's some content or timing that's happening within those flows, a lot of the time you'll be dropping your wait durations down or firing sooner for the flows. Your campaigns in terms of how many you're sending on what days should be essentially ready to go. But segmentation through that period will matter as well. Asking yourself, is there someone I should cut out of this thing so I'm not hammering them with an email a day or an email for a product they've already shopped, as an example. Possibly looking to, if they have bought that thing and you're pushing final hours on it and it's not something they can consume or buy a second one of, cut them out. Or if they have bought something and you want to offer them a second purchase, like a order before we ship, add it on, talk to people in a relevant way. Don't talk to them all like they haven't shopped yet or that they have shopped, right? Split them out, talk to them, and you'll get a better result given what you know about them.
Yeah, really great points. And just before we move on to Shopify, there is something that you've both touched on there that I just want to reiterate. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, amazing time of year to boost sales and everything like that. But it's really important that you know who you are going to be promoting it to and not creating a discount culture environment where your VIP customers that are prepared to pay for things at high value, great margins, you don't want to train them to constantly look for the next sale. So who you run these campaigns to is just as important as who you don't run them to. So really think about how you are educating your audience and those people that are generally always willing to pay rack rate, full price, see the value in what you've got, seriously consider excluding some of those people from the campaigns, or at least having a strategic approach in regards to what is offered to them that doesn't devalue the entire offering in regards to your core business and main products that you offer, because you are just going to educate them to look for the next sale. Yeah, so moving on, let's have a look at Shopify. Things have changed a little bit, as they do in the space from year to year. Nick, give us the overview around 24 through to 2025. What are the highlights of 2024 and what are the upgrades that we can expect that are in place for 2025 that people should be leveraging today?
Yes, certainly. I think on the Shopify side, a chunk of it is more of the same sort of things. Again, they're preparing early, making sure everything's in place. The buy now, sort of pay later schemes, and something that works increasingly well. It's always nice to be able to either break something up over several payments or pay for it in the future. And of course, mobile just keeps getting more and more important than ever. And I think for a lot of sites, the mobile traffic, especially over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, can be in excess of 80%. So if nothing else, and it's something that we're probably all guilty of, is you get so used to when you're doing looking at these sites on your desktop, it's always worth just jumping on your mobile and just looking through your site, as a first time user, put that hat on. And see, what does it look like? How fast is it responding? You can, there's all sorts of tests that you can run it through. The Google Lighthouse is a great one that will break down on, what is maybe making your site slower than it could be. Is it that you've got large images? There are issues with maybe the pop-ups. Maybe some of the script can be consolidated. So there's all sorts of reasons that these can be running slow. But we hear it all the time. Attention spans are getting shorter, and that makes that mobile load time more and more important, whether it's for the search engine optimization side. Because Google takes the page speed as a big signal, but also just your average user, if you're being redirected from an ad coming to a site, people just don't want to wait. They want things instantly. So that site has to be super fast. So again, looking at your themes, using the latest version of a theme, but just something really simple as looking at how does your site look on a phone, because it's surprising how often it looks different to you expect, or something pops up. So that's...
And what sort of things should we be getting in place for 2025, thinking ahead?
So I think SEO, there's the more and more people are looking at using AI as part of their shopping, and there's surveys that over 50% now will be trying to get people to type in on your AI system to see what should I be buying in this category, etc. So that's again another thing, is just that using these systems that if you're on ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever you're using, just typing in those questions and seeing how that sort of searching for your product, your brand, and seeing how that is different from the search engine optimization side, because there's a lot of the structured data that can be implemented on Shopify now that these AI agents or AI systems find it much easier to read data in a structured form and pull that out. And it's surprising how, even if you're a relatively small site, you can often outcompete or outperform against some of the big brands who are maybe more inflexible and find it harder to make the website changes. Often as a small business, you're in a bit of an advantageous position there that you can make change. So I think that having...
Just to add to that as well,
yeah,
if I can, just to add to that for the SEO side of it, it can be incredibly beneficial to create a dedicated Black Friday Cyber Monday landing page with your various categories in there. For a couple of reasons. Firstly, jump on and leverage the benefit that you can get around SEO, both for traditional search and also the AI search as well. But also, even though you may not necessarily have those products listed there in the weeks ahead, you can use it to build the list in regards to register now for early release. What are those things that you can do to capture people's details so that when you do launch, you've got another audience that are already warm, already looking, and already ready to buy for those sorts of things as well. So, really good point about the SEO piece. What else have we got there?
And no, I appreciate what you had to say about some of the pieces that where systems like Klaviyo tie in quite nicely. It's the ability to have pop-ups and surveys and quizzes and things that either enable you to get people to register, or more importantly, work out what is the intent of these people, what is the more data that you can gather on them, and that ties really nicely into some of the personalisation strategy talked about for other platforms. But in terms of Shopify itself, I think it's a fantastic platform for just looking at what are you selling. What sort of combinations of goods are you selling, and maybe allowing you to think a bit better about how can you increase the average order value and lifetime value of your customers. So are there things that are selling well or not well? And there's a really basic example of that is running an ABT analysis report in Shopify. So that's just one of the standard reports you can run, and it enables you to see what is selling well, your A product, right down to C, maybe what is not selling so well. So that'll give you an idea about what sort of stock levels maybe you may need to maintain. But also, the other reports include things like what sells well together. So that gives you an idea about, when you're putting together bundles, what products go particularly well together. Because I think it is just trying to maximize the value of your customer. The higher that you can get that average order value, if you're paying for shipping anyway, if you can get another product in there or somehow raise that pricing up, I think that's something that's really, really helpful for that revenue and things like that.
Marty, anything else you want to add on the Shopify side of it for Black Friday, Cyber Monday specifically?
For the person managing the website, especially, this doesn't change year to year, but your readiness is so important over that period as well, like making sure you've got your collections built well ahead of time. You've also got your banners ready. How's your homepage going to look? Have you been through exactly what Nick said at the start there? Have you been through on desktop and mobile to see what the experience is like for a new customer or an incognito browser as a new customer, to understand what do they see? How do they interact? What are they going to see? What do I want them to see? And is there any break here? Are there any, it would be chaotic, for example, if you're linking to a 404 collection or something like that. So tagging of products or products being both, on and off the site. So what will you run with this year? If you're trying to predict a product with low margins, if you're trying to focus on products that you need to shift as a result of high stock or slug stock that you're trying to move, how are you going to merchandise around that? Very likely that looks somewhat different to what your standard website will look like to shop. And the other one that rings true for every year is looking at AOV or bundling. But when you say what might sell well together or merchandising what might sell well together, there's so many elements to that as well, that if you're saying I could build a bundle out of these 3 products or these 2 products at least, how do I merchandise through the websites that these things are seen relatively near to each other, or that it's available from your product page, your mini cart, or even upsell post purchase? So looking at your tech stack to say how do I do that is really important, because you will hit the roof on Shopify's standard what I can do in terms of merchandising here before I need to lean on another app or another way to sell, particularly post-purchase. So add to my order now, or in the mini cart as an example, how do I add? What do I add? One thing that I see falls over for people a lot of the time is the suggestions that to go with that product are either completely manual on a small SKU range on a product page, which is okay, not manageable at scale though, or in the mini cart, they're manual for the whole website. So no matter what product you're suggesting, the same 4 underneath are shown to everybody. You've got to have some relationship back to what they've shopped before, or what they've got in their cart, or what you're trying to push as a result of it being on a larger discount, whatever it might be, that contributes towards them getting either some reward, typically free shipping, or another percentage off, which just goes well with. But what's that mechanic be? What would that mechanic be as to why I would add that to my cart is probably important to think about as well, other than just saying, hey, add socks with jeans as an example. Why would I add beanie with gloves, whatever it is? It's not just that they sell well together for a reason. So some people will take you up on that because, yes, they need that product to go with. Others need a nudge. So is it that you add another thing to your cart to save more? Are you trying to hit a free shipping threshold? But when you're thinking about it as a shopper, so when you come out of your reports as to what works well and what people might want to buy, and you've done your planning, think about it as a shopper, not a merchant, and why would I add this thing?
Love that. Now, if we jump on to Meta, if there's probably one area where things have changed a lot from a strategy perspective, as well as the types of assets that you either could or should be using, this is the ever-changing beast. So really important to be across what was working today, because if all you do is follow the footprint and clone what you did last year, you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Things move rapidly in this area. So guys, what are you seeing the difference between this time last year and coming into Black Friday, Cyber Monday for 2025? What are those changes that have happened on the platform, and what do people need to be thinking about today? Nick?
Yeah, I guess like a lot of the platforms, it's sort of more of everything. I think as an average for Meta last year, you were maybe looking at, say, 7 to 10 ads in a relatively small campaign. That's the sort of standard. The new APIs are out for helping you track conversions, things like that, some basic audience segmentation, some remarketing maybe, and you were probably pretty much okay. I think now it's becoming less and less about the managing and the manual targeting and more about creative strategy. And giving the system the right signal. So we talked right at the start about the importance of first-party data. Do you know your customers? And the more as these systems like Meta move more and more to automatically finding the people that you're after, your ideal customer, what you need to do is give them better and better data. Because if you don't send them in the right direction, or you keep things too broad, it's just going to go after the wrong person, and you'll just waste a lot of money doing that. So I think it's really important to make sure that those integrations with any other systems that you can, whether it's your Shopify list, whether it's your Klaviyo lists, and all that customer information is being fed through. Yes, you can do it as a very high level, but if you can segment it into any sort of product categories or areas a bit further, I think that's gold, especially as you start using lookalike audience and things like that, or the system itself just goes off and searches for lookalike audiences. With the AI, is easier and easier to create sort of subject lines and headings and text, so that's great. If text was kind of the thing that we started off with back in 2022, it's now more and more about images and video that are AI created. And again, this is all available through the systems themselves, or you can create it yourself, or you can use obviously repurposed social posts and things like that. But I think you probably want, because of the way that the systems work, they like to use not only a lot of data, but have also a lot of creatives in there to use as well. So we're finding Meta's starting to create almost a full funnel within some of the ad sets. So instead of having those 6-7 ads in an ad set, you might want to double that. You might want to go to 20 plus iterations per concept in there and let the system work it out. So as the system can take people through from sort of an awareness thing right the way through to a sale, you might want to have 10 or 15, maybe 20 different types of creative in there, and let Meta work out which is the right type of content to show to the particular person at a particular time, because it's getting better and better at that. And I think the power of these systems is in the ability to be more strategic about how you're using it, and let the actual implementation and the really hands-on stuff, letting the system do that more and more. Obviously with some oversight, because it has to be stood up right. But if you let the system do the job, I think sometimes the more hands-off you can be on the actual implementation and how that's done, the more effective your campaigns are.
Yeah, I'm fully behind that, and just anecdotally, don't necessarily quote me on the exact figures here, but I know I can remember recently seeing something from Stephen Bartlett from the Diary of a CEO podcast saying how they have gone from testing 1 to 10 different pieces of creatives and thumbnails and snippets to now thousands for every single episode, to allow the system to figure out what works best. And it's now easier to generate thousands than it was to generate 10 or 20 in the past, because of the automated approach, leveraging AI. So get familiar with it, get comfortable with it, and get used to giving up some control to get better outcomes.
Yeah, there's nothing marketers hate more than giving up control, particularly over creative, into a platform. But I would certainly agree that the theme of this year seems to be two themes really. Seems to be, first of all, trust the platform, which I of course still don't. The oversight side of things is very important. So watch what it is doing, watch who it's spending on, look at your existing versus engaged, or existing versus new customer splits in terms of like who it's targeting, and what is the cost per on all of those things. So what's it costing to acquire someone versus reconvert an existing customer. And then the other one is the rate of change at which the system has managed to push in new features, that it will push you towards this broad line of thinking in many cases. It's the new features, sometimes week to week, or at least month to month, that you have to be familiar with ahead of the week of or the month of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, that you are ready to use those to your advantage, because if you're not, everyone else will be. And you certainly don't want to be sifting through a slow and sometimes non-responsive platform at the busiest time of year to try and figure out how these things work.
Yeah, I'd be keen to get your guys' thoughts on scale. budget versus volume of creative, because if we go back to some of the old fundamental rules, you still need enough data for it to be the system to be able to make informed decisions. So there is no point, in my view, of going out there and creating 20, 30, 50, 100, 1,000 different creatives if you don't have the budget to back it to learn. You need to get that balance in regards to the smaller the budget, probably the less number of creatives you need, but the bigger your budgets, the more important it is to scale creative, aligned with budget. And you'll end up, in my humble opinion, you will end up with a much better ROAS if you have that approach, because the cost of developing the creative is so minimal these days. And if you have the scale of creative, you also have the opportunity to find out what works. And sometimes it's the most surprising things.
Yeah, for sure. I certainly see a lot of the time when we're looking at planning and we're looking at ranges, or this is both in and outside of a Black Friday or a Cyber Monday, that a lot of what comes back is what you assumed would be correct anyway, in which case it's an excellent utilization of a tool to prove what would otherwise be an assumption as opposed to anything driven by data. But there is quite often the placements, like in terms of where will this serve and where will it be effective, is different for every brand, every audience. It won't always be in feed, it won't always be through stories or reels as an example, but if you don't have the creatives available for those placements, you have no chance of serving well in them. Don't expect to do a good job of your advertising if you're not ready to give it. So I think the demand for creative massively outweighs what the balance, or has taken the lion's share of the balance between what a budgeting strategy used to be, whereas now you'll be pushed further and further towards broad. And in saying that, though, I still see plenty of brands where we deliberately mix and would always mix in probably call it the opposite of an Advantage Plus style of advertising, where you're trying to deliberately target a small custom audience. You are trying to get a better result with a specific probably message or specific creative to a very specific group of people during that period. So I think it's entirely valid. I'd say it'll be another 2 or 3 years before either we're replaced by a system that does that, or that I'd be fully comfortable with it. But in most cases, best option would be try to make the most of that. When a system will give you broad targeting options with an outcome, that you feed it everything it can to get that right result. There's no point in sitting on the sidelines and saying, it doesn't work for me, when you haven't given it the right inputs for it to work. And then budgeting wise, the thing that I try to talk to people about through this period is, what are you spending on the awareness of this period coming up that you're going to be doing something? Because now it's typically, rather than am I in or out, which is a conversation sort of 8 or 10 years ago, it's more like, how am I in or out nowadays? So if you're going in, when do you start talking about that? And when do you plan on launching? And what share of the budget will that have? Versus budgeting for your phases of your sale, because it's not just a linear spend across everything every day. You're very likely spending more up front, or spending more at the point that you're dropping other offers in through that period. You might be running a 4-offer promotion over 4 or 5 days, or 10 days even. So spending when there's a chance for you to convert more is probably a very good idea. And then the final piece there is just that if you're trying to look at your spend for the month, it's not like any other month, same as Christmas is. There's no point in spending beyond that sale in the same way that you were spending during it. Phase your budget to work for you through the different phases of sale that you've got. Your warm up, your launch or your offer launches, and then your wind up at the end, and then probably stop spending towards the end of the month, or go back to very low spend, because once your offer is over, you're probably not converting very much. So it's the weirdest month in terms of your leading and your lagging effort and your spending. So all the creative effort, all the planning should be underway now, and then you reap the rewards of that when you actually go to have your budget in Meta and Google, or wherever it might be.
Yeah, good segue that, mentioning Google, because everything that you've just mentioned is also very, very relevant to Google, because your budgeting is not just focused on individual platforms. It's, what are you spending where as well. So what are the things that we need to start thinking about on the Google side of it, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think like all of these platforms we've talked about, the AI component and the desire of the platforms is more to get you more into that managerial strategic role rather than the hands-on. So if we, the usual things are still applying, shopping feed optimization, just making sure that all of your product information and things are flowing through there, so that data hygiene piece of it. But as well as the SEO stuff, we're looking more and more at the GEO. So if you look at generative optimization, so that the AI searching. So if you're just really looking at simple things on your page, so that does my headline say best gift card? Does some of my wording in my ad reflecting those queries? So it's sort of whether you can mention your audience in the ads as well, and that's a similar thing for Meta. So are you targeting, say, teenagers or small businesses or people in a particular area? Obviously, there are guidelines around too much personalisation, but if you can phrase all of those queries and ideas with that audience in mind, that's really helpful. I think, again, that having on the websites as well some of the structured data piece that we talked about earlier is important as well. But I think the site on Google, more automation, so it does give you that ability to add a whole lot more and do hit that maximum number of titles and subject lines and images, all that sort of thing. The AI will help you with that, and it can come up with some weird things at times, but the system it knows what it's doing. There's a tremendous amount of data that they're drawing on for that. So do be aware. One thing, just as a general thing that I've seen across quite a lot of clients, is when you are using this, you're wanting to define themes, and say you're going into some of the PMAX campaigns, for example. You've defined your themes, you've defined your audience, you've got your images in there. It's still amazing how often it still comes back that the top performing query is a brand one. So I would advise people to audit their data and just making sure that if you don't want brand in there, make sure it's excluded. If you're quite happy to have brand in there, that's fine, but just be aware that does often move the needle quite a long way. And like I say, so often the top performing queries or keywords and things like that are relating directly to your brand. So that does it does have a positive, and like I said, that it does bring up your ROAS and makes all the numbers look good. But just be aware that you for every brand query that you've paid for, that's an opportunity on something maybe more broad keyword, or a new customer that maybe you haven't been able to target on the side of that. So it's just being aware that as you start to manage these systems and get less hands-on, you do have to be aware about that they do have their own objectives.
That is a good point in regards to that. Brand campaigns, there is always a debate, and people are, I suppose, often say, well, why would I bid on my brand name? I'm paying for traffic that I'll already get with SEO and things like that. But I would definitely recommend that people do some research, do some test searches. You'll be surprised how many competitors bid on your brand name. And if it's about getting there in front of your competitors, if your competitors can ineffectively get a low cost of acquisition if they're bidding on your brand name and you're not appearing. But also the other thing to bear in mind is if you are getting that very, very low cost per click for your brand searches, it can positively impact your overall ad score, which can then have a really good positive impact in regards to bringing down your overall cost per click, where you get rewarded in the back end around your relevancy and all of those sorts of things as well. So I've generally found in the past, and I don't consider myself an expert anymore, but I have generally found in the past that it is the positives outweigh the negatives when it comes to incorporating brand campaigns overall as well. So that's my hot take on it.
I agree with you.
Anything else on your side, Marty, or should we move on to TikTok?
I think One thing that's probably worth looking at in terms of when you think about Google Ads for that period as well is exactly what I was saying with Meta Ads around your budgeting, is that it's just not a linear month. So how am I spending, what am I spending on, and when? And if you're going to just have complete awareness around, if you're going to run, like you need your creatives for Google Ads now as well. It's not just text anymore and shopping feeds like it used to be. There's plenty of additional placements, but just know that when you're adding and removing products from visibility from your website, that's going to affect things like what's in your product feed and your listing groups. So be ready ahead of time with things like, am I tagging these products, or how am I building a listing group or a asset group with just my Black Friday or Cyber Monday products in mind. How you surface those. If you've got thousands or tens of thousands of SKUs, what you're surfacing and how you're surfacing really does matter. And those same reports Nick was talking about at the start there with what sold well last year, look at what mechanics you ran and look at how you're going to set up your budgeting around what you want to serve. So if there's 10,000 products, you might have a preference to serve 10% of those with an overweighted portion of your budget. And that could be based on things like they're top sellers, they have good margin, they're the stock I want to move, but know how you want your campaigns to respond to that. To, treat these channels as being somewhat aligned and some very much so talking to one another, that you've got consistent messaging and approach between all of them. It's not just change my website and spend more on Google Ads as an example.
Love it. Yeah. So on to the new hot topic. It's been brewing for a while and absolutely growing year on year massively is the good old TikTok becoming the platform of choice for many creators and those that are looking to advertise now. And what are you seeing there, Nick?
Yeah, I think the ad spend across all platforms is just going up year on year. And I've seen numbers of up to, this year it might be 30% bigger spend than last year, for example. So all of that money has either got to go somewhere new or it has to push prices up. And generally it probably does both, to be fair. So I think as you're looking at your all of your metrics across sort of Meta and Google, which are the two biggest platforms for most people, as those numbers start to go up, then you start to sort of think about, are there other opportunities? And TikTok is definitely a fantastic opportunity. Everybody seems to be either on it or certainly using it. So yeah, like I say, a great opportunity. And often you can get some numbers that will help sort of drag down, I guess, your overall costs and things like that. So whether it's on the straight awareness side, you can get some really cheap impressions across TikTok, or it's also for some businesses is working really well on the acquisition side as well. So for direct selling on there. So it is one of those platforms that's offering some comparative cost advantages for some people. The creative, I think, is probably the hardest thing for a lot of people, that if you're doing it yourself, the quality and the entertainment factor on a TikTok ad is a lot higher than across the other platforms. It's surprising what you can sort of get away with on Meta or Google, but TikTok, because it is video, because it is very animated, you really need to have some entertaining content there. So a lot of people on the back of that are partnering with creators more and more. So if you can get an influencer to help or to produce content for you, that goes a long way, both in taking away the overhead that you have to, the time and effort and energy and creative input that you have to have into it. And also brings you into, the ability to use their audience as well. And to be fair, that's probably a similar thing on the Meta platform. So if you can get in with creators who are in your industry, that's an important thing. It goes back to, I guess, what we said right at the start, was that preparation is key here, because those good people get signed up very quickly, and there is limited bandwidth on them. So yeah, I would definitely say, looking at recruiting early, there is the creator marketplace that will give you access to people if you're not sure who is an appropriate person or who is available to do it. And then the other piece is just keeping on with your organic, so that if somebody does see you and they are going to your channel, just making sure that you do have a presence on them. And again, that's probably the same for all all of the social platforms. Is there's nothing worse than you're looking up a brand and go to their page and they haven't updated or haven't made a post for X months, or sometimes it's been a year or so. It's amazing how quickly time goes by when you have to create stuff for this. So keeping it, and this is nothing new, but keeping your content relatively recent, doesn't have to be every day, but you do want a recent piece, using the seasonal hashtags, things like that, and just making sure that whatever content and whoever you're working with there does integrate with what's on your website, so that if they do see that content, there is something that relates to it when they go back to your website. And again, that's probably true for the other platforms that you're using as well.
Yeah, for sure. We did have a little chat offline before, just in and around TikTok live shopping, all those sorts of things. And while it's not available here in New Zealand at the moment, I think it's basically US, UK, and some parts of Southeast Asia. Building a little bit of a presence and some brand on TikTok now is going to put you in good stead for when those sorts of things do get released. And we don't know if or when that is going to be the place or the time, but there is nothing better than being prepared and being one or two or a few steps ahead of the competition. When you have a ready-made audience, it's going to help you out so much more. And think creatively. Look at cheap cars. There are a whole bunch of brands that are doing some great work locally, and it is just so good to see them being creative, thinking differently, and building their brand here where they can get international exposure for very, very little. And it's all about leveraging that user-generated content and potentially, creating some yourself as well. So think really, really hard about what you can do around that TikTok strategy today, even if it's not for this year's sales, but positioning yourself so that you're ahead of the competition. There is nothing wrong with that. And you would be surprised, even some of us in the more boring industries, you would be surprised if you got on there and did a search for just how much engagement there is in some of the most boring subjects, because people find very, very interesting niches that you would be surprised when there isn't the competition out there, how much of a loyal community you can find that will support you if you are creating good quality content that adds value to their lives. You look like you're going to say something there, Marty.
I'm about to say something, yeah, just making sure you're finished on your point there, but same thing, as this is one that's true every year as opposed to something different this year, is that TikTok content is not an ad under traditional social advertising structure. If you try to advertise with your Facebook or Instagram content and just repurpose it as an ad, the fastest way for it to fall flat is to put it onto TikTok and just think about what it's being seen in between. So really high quality, polished TVC almost like content will fall absolutely flat between some very rudimentary text over video shot on an iPhone stuff that a creator's put together. And the audience is very savvy towards that as well. So they will reject that advertising as advertising immediately. And by leaning into that creator marketplace to be able to get in touch with people and work with them as creators, giving them the room to come up with something that at the end of the day, they know what works for their audience. And if your audience is their audience, let them do that and let them create with something that will connect, as opposed to an ad, which is just an impression that falls flat otherwise. I think that matters every single year. But just want to talk really, really quickly as well about your keeping an eye on what's coming. A few years ago, we were talking about whether or not we would be looking at live shopping events. It sort of seemed to die out after lockdowns. There's probably going to be some form of resurgence of that when the tech finally gets to our markets, being New Zealand and Australia predominantly. But being in platform and being ready for a change like that is a heck of a lot easier than creating a TikTok account for your business once that's here and in market and you're losing sales to it. So the readiness and the eagerness to explore, just like in Meta with creatives in terms of leaning more into a creative testing structure, or looking into Klaviyo to say, what could I do differently this year around whether it's sending messages by sentiment, whether it's sending messages or timing based on lifetime value, or you're looking at how you're changing out your predictive purchase flows to have Black Friday content in it. Whatever you're looking at there, the sooner you are engaged with those elements and looking into it, the more likelihood you have of capitalizing on that as a business. And if you're not doing it, your competitors are 100%.
Yep. With you all the way. final thoughts from my side. The fundamentals still need to be in place for you to be able to get the best out of any seasonal campaigns. So first things first, get out there, do your sanity checks, make sure that the basics are being done well. One thing that Nick shared with us earlier was a great blog post from Shopify around the 25-point checklist, the things that you should be doing now to make sure that you're ready. And we'll share a link to that below, here, there, somewhere, wherever it is, things like that. But just getting the fundamentals done right, absolutely foundational stuff that you should be ensuring is done. Secondly, Marty has said it a number of times, the earlier you are prepared, the better the outcome. The amount of times that we have had challenges with clients coming with a whole heap of last-minute things at the busiest time of their entire year. It's now busier than Christmas. That makes it hard for everybody. It puts pressure on you internally. It puts pressure on your partners externally. And it is a recipe for subpar results when you can get feedback from the partners and the people that you work with closely. If you submit these things early, that will help you get better results. So, those two things, get the fundamentals right and start preparing early, because the better prepared you are today, it's amazing how often you identify things that you change as you get closer to the date, rather than having to think of things and do a last-minute half-ass job. It deserves the attention of early prep. So yeah, that's it from me and the guys. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. Looking forward to the next roundtable episode. We'll be going into a whole bunch more things, going deeper. But ka kite, have a great day, and thanks again for tuning in.